thank you for coming and for being here this morning. My name is Annette Diefenthaler.
My name is Jaime Uceta.
And the two of us work for IDEO, which is a design and innovation consultancy in San Francisco. And we are both portfolio directors in our education studio, so we focus only on education topics. The company works across many different sectors, so you might have heard from us in a different context as well. What we are here to do with you today is essentially share an approach to problem solving that we use in our work. And we want to use that about one of the big topics that has been part of the discussion here at the conference. So the question for today is, how could we pay for universal pre-K education in the next 5 years? It's a big question, right? It's a really big question, and it's a big challenge for us to think about. Very aspirational, right? It has lots of different implications. And questions like these that are daunting, that are big and that are complex, are part of our everyday work at IDEO. These are a few examples of what we have been working on recently. We're thinking about transitions from high school to college. We're thinking about galvanizing alumni networks to be engaged in educational equity. We're thinking about affordable school systems that are scalable and excellent at the same time. So oftentimes we start with challenges that are as big as the one we want to think about today. And what we do at IDEO is we think about it through the perspective of design thinking. And I'm curious how many of you have heard or are familiar with design thinking? Of course, yes, some of you, great. Some are not, fantastic. I'm glad. That means that you will be able to learn from each other about that. Design thinking essentially is a way of approaching problems from different perspectives to get to innovation. As an innovation firm, we're always asked to envision the future and to come up with solutions that have not been seen or tested before. That is exactly what we're talking about with this topic, right? We do not have a precedent for universal pre-K education being financed and being possible even globally. So we have to think about a new solution in that case. And the way we approach that at IDEO is looking at three components. One is the feasibility. Can we make that, right? Is it possible to do that? What do we need to make that happen? The second one is the viability. Can we pay for it, which is a big focus of this conversation for sure. But there's a third perspective that we often use to start with thinking about that topic, which is people's perspective. The desirability. Is anyone even going to like our solution? What are people looking for? What makes it desirable and really interesting? And what we will encourage you to do today is to really think through that perspective of people who are concerned with a topic, particularly as we think about systemic challenges as the one of financing pre-K education. So with that in mind, I'm going to give you 3 ground rules for this session. They're pretty simple. So just follow those 3 rules and go along with them. They will help you act as a design thinker. So number 1 is looking at challenges as opportunities for design. This sounds very simple. It's actually not that easy, right? It can be really simple to get completely overwhelmed with a question as grandiose as the one that we're looking at here, right? And then just get really caught up in thinking, well, but this is never going to work because we have this challenge that we need to overcome, and then who's going to solve for that, and how do we even, is this question even valid, right? That actually doesn't help us advance towards design. If we think about a question as an opportunity and start building towards a solution with optimism and really keep that optimism alive, we're going to come up with solutions that nobody has ever thought were even thinkable. So we're going to do a little bit of an exercise around this just to get us in the right mindset. And we'll try what it means to truly be and act as an optimist.
Great. So we're going to do a little quick brainstorming. You guys are going to design the ideal birthday party, okay? And you're going to pick the person next to you, and you're going to come up with an idea, and you're going to alternate the suggestion of ideas. But before each idea, we want you to start it with a no but, okay? No but before each idea you suggest. I know you want to just a quick demonstration. So let's say we're thinking about our ideal vacation, right? Let's say, let's go to Costa Rica. I think it'd be an amazing place.
No, but I think Costa Rica it's not really an area that I've ever wanted to go to. I think Thailand would be a much better suggestion.
No, but Thailand's so far, and Costa Rica really has this sort of a rustic feel to it. It's in Latin America.
No, but rustic is terrible for a vacation.
Okay.
You get the point, right?
You guys get the point. All right. So ready? You guys gonna start again? Ideal birthday party. No but. Go.
Can you join him? Yeah. Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah. Great. Are you going to join us here?
Is that how it works as a facilitator?
That would be great. Yes, thank you. Is this your first session you're facilitating? Okay, great.
Okay. All right, how did that feel? How far did you guys get? All right, let's try the same exercise. You guys are still thinking about an ideal birthday party, okay? Still alternating suggestions, but we want you to preface each suggestion, each idea with a yes and, okay? Go. Okay. Okay, you guys ready? How did that feel? Yeah? Did you guys come up with more ideas? Same number of ideas? How was that? Can somebody describe it? What was? Yes. Yes. Good. Excellent. That's the attitude you want to keep today, and that's really key to design thinking in general. You want
Okay, so I'll ask you to just keep that in mind, and this may feel like a silly little exercise when you talk about a birthday party, but if you observe how you talk to other people in your daily life, particularly at work and in meetings, I used to have this habit of saying no but, or at least start sentences with but a lot. Actually, even when I was agreeing with the person I'm talking to, right? We often tend to say but, just as a habit. And when you start watching for that and actually train yourself to think and talk in a way where you say yes and, you actually become a much more attentive listener. Because if you say yes and, you really need to know what that person said, right, that you're agreeing with or building on their idea. So that's something that's really useful to keep in mind, just a little tip. Second, start with people. I've already alluded to this. Design thinking does always start with people. And that is something that can be challenging when we think about systemic questions as they often come up in education, right? Because they feel that we're more talking about systems and things that should be happening rather than people that actually have to be motivated to make those changes and participate in those changes. So I want us to think about, one quick apology, I know I've made a mistake on the next slide as an old question, oh, it actually does have it. So with our question in mind of thinking about how to finance pre-K education, who are the people that are going to be concerned with that? Who are people we're designing for here? What do you think? Children, yes. Who else? Parents, schools, policymakers.
The people with the background and the economic conditions of the people.
People with economic conditions, yeah, so maybe relatives. What was that?
Or curriculum providers.
Exactly, teachers, yes. Maybe employers, right? If people have pre-K education available, that means they can work.
Some places, in some places, security.
Security, yes, absolutely. security personnel, transportation people.
Children back and forth, especially the young.
Exactly, that shuttle them can be concerned.
Food.
Cooks, chefs, people who make the food, policymakers, right? Mayors, government leaders, town councilors. So as you think about those questions today, I encourage you to keep in mind the people you're actually designing for. Because if you think about a solution that predominantly addresses parents, you will think about that very differently than if you're designing a solution that is trying to actually change the mind of policymakers, or that is hoping to essentially get philanthropists to open their pockets and wallets to essentially contribute to this, right? So think about picking one of those groups to design for today. It will help you approaching that challenge in a more tangible way. Okay, so we'll start with people. And then the last one, we will be making today. I know you all were designers when you were kids. I know some of you are still practicing that. Many of you are probably practicing that in your free time or around the holidays when you start making things. And we will do that today. So you see that there are materials all over. That is a big part of the design process, because making things real and tangible and giving them form and shape, even if it's just with Post-it notes and paper, can be an incredibly helpful way to stimulate your thinking. And so that's a muscle that we will exercise.
Plus, we just want you guys to use those hats.
Oh, absolutely. Most of all.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we go any further, I am honored and grateful to have two fabulous speakers with us today that are demonstrating the use of our fabulous props already. Paul Atherton and Rebecca Winthrop have joined us today to share a little bit of inspiration. Rebecca, you will begin, is that right? So Rebecca Winthrop runs the Center for Universal Education at the Brookings Institute, and therefore has been thinking about the challenge that we're concerned with today.
Making use of the hats. Thank you so much.
I'll give you a microphone. Give me a second. Maybe. Yeah, okay, great. Then we went. Mm.
Over to Paul and pass the hat, is to clarify the challenges that we're going to be designing around. So the question of how do we pay for early childhood? So there's 3 challenges that I am going to put on the table. I'm sure you guys would come up with a lot more, but to get the conversation started. And then I'll pass to Paul, and he'll get some ideas going about possible creative solutions that we can discuss. So the 3 challenges I want to put on the table. One is that we have a very long way to go, and I'll tell you in a minute what that means. 2, what we count is not really what counts. And 3, scaling up in early childhood is very complex. So challenge number 1, we have a long way to go. This means we have a long way to go in human terms. There's about half the kids in the world today are enrolled in early childhood. I should say preschool. And I'm suggesting that we should focus really on low income and low middle income countries, because that's where the biggest gap is. It's also where I have the most data. So at the moment, if we want every kid in low-income countries and low-middle-income countries to enroll in preschool, we have about 30 million kids currently, and we need to go up to 78 million kids. So we need to expand preschool for about 48 million kids. And I want to point out that this is a particularly heavy lift in low-income countries, where currently there's only 4 million kids enrolled in preschool. So in low-income countries, they have to expand the number of kids who are enrolled in preschool 6-fold. So in human terms, there's a long way to go. In monetary terms, financial terms, there's also a long way to go. We actually don't have fabulous data on spending, but here is what we have, and I'm using the UNESCO Global Monitoring Report latest data on education costings, which came out last week. So the first thing to note is the general good rule of thumb is that you should spend 10% of your education budget on preschool. That's more or less what countries in the OECD spend, although I must say it varies greatly. At the moment, in the developing world, countries are not spending nearly that. To give you two examples, Togo and Sierra Leone both spend 1.6% of their budget on preschool. Again, that's in that group, that low-income countries that have a long way to go. So broadly, if we look at low and middle income countries, we need annually an extra $15 billion. So that's what we need to find. The other thing, in terms of monetary terms, is, and this is, I think, important, is that if we want to have good quality education, the unit cost of preschool needs to increase. Again, this is from UNESCO's sort of estimations. At the moment, at the moment, people are roughly on average are spending $225 per child for preschool. And and they estimate if you want to have better quality, you need to go up to $684 per child. And largely what they're looking at there is training of teachers and smaller class sizes. So at the moment, it's about, on average, 27 kids per teacher in preschool, which is a lot. I know Andreas talked about class size not really mattering so much yesterday morning. I do not think he was talking about preschool. I think he was talking about primary and secondary. But who knows? You guys might disagree. And so anyways, that increase in unit cost is from 27 students per teacher to 18 students per teacher. So that's number one. That's the long way to go part. Number two, challenge is, what we count is not really what counts. Because this whole thing was focused on, financing for preschool, for early childhood. Preschool, I think, is what we were talking about, right? Preschool, yes. Okay. All the sort of financing costings around paying for preschool, what it costs, are usually based on infrastructure, how much the buildings cost, how much the different inputs cost. We don't have good estimates of what matters the absolute most in the quality of preschool, which is having very high quality teacher-student interaction. And that's very hard. We don't really count all the things that go into that. It certainly is one of the biggest barriers to a high quality preschool experience. And we know from a whole bunch of literature that it's better to not put kids into preschool, let them play and interact and be in the community, than to put them into a preschool where it's very poor quality and they're stuck rigidly behind desks at an early age. So that's challenge number two. Challenge number three is that scaling up is very complicated in the preschool space, largely because unlike some of the other education spaces, which are much more government dominated, the preschool space is a total mix of actors, and they're very complicated with a wide range of people: private sector, communities, households, families. So just to give you an example, in India, 40% of the kids are enrolled in preschool, and 75% of the money comes from the government, and 25% from the private sector. Virtually the opposite in Indonesia with the same enrollment rates. 44% are enrolled in preschool, and 5% of it comes from government money, and 95% of it from the private sector. So it's very sort of complicated, and we certainly know that it will cost a lot more initially to sort of scale up, because you have to build the systems of quality control and sort of regulation, et cetera. For example, in Mozambique, they have a good pilot of quality early childhood, and they're now scaling up, and half the money they're investing is going into building the preschool system. So those are the three big challenges we have. Paul, I pass the hat to you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
I'm actually going to wear this hat. Is it me?
So Paul Atherton is an education economist and works on the Girls' Education Challenge at the DFID. Thank you for being here, Paul.
That's okay. Can everybody hear me all right before I start? Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Well, I look quite stupid in this hat, but I'm going to rock it anyway. Thank you to Rebecca for helpfully setting up all the challenges and leaving me with coming up with some solutions. The first thing I should say is I don't have the solutions, but if I did, and if we did, then there's no reason for any of us to be here, so we could all just go and kick back by the pool. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw out some ideas and build on the kind of challenges as opportunities, which was raised earlier. So I think the first thing to say is if we've got funding shortfall of $15 billion, there's probably no way we're going to get there in the next 5 years. I think we need to be honest, we need to think creatively about using the resources we already have, and we need to stop just relying on bringing in extra money, because you look round and you've got to compete for resources. If we spend it on here, we can't spend it on something else. So we need to be honest with ourselves about the opportunity cost and the likelihood of actually getting extra money. That's not to say we shouldn't, it's just to say that we can't rely on getting an extra $15 billion. But what this actually does is it gives us a great opportunity, because it means we've got to sit there and look at the resources we already have, which means that we go out there and we look at the communities which we're operating in and where these children live, and we look at the resources that are there already and the skill sets that are there already. We look at the attitudes that they have towards early childhood, and we look at their expectations. Okay, and why does this matter? Because what people perceive quality to be and perceive schooling to be really matters if you're trying to set it up. So if they think that schooling is actually sitting at a bench and sitting at a table and discussing, or just writing something down from a board, then you need to change that. You need to change their expectations to go in. And one thing, I'm not an expert in early childhood, but I hear it a lot, is playing is learning. You know, so getting this message across, because once we have that, and you have this other phrase which I've heard a lot, which is everything is a toy, then all of a sudden you've reduced your cost burden, because you don't need to have all the formal setups. You know, and a lot of the stuff you need to learn counting, you can do it with stones. I remember as a child kicking a can around to go and play football. You know, we didn't need expensive equipment. You can think creatively about what you've already got. So I think that's the first thing to say. Like, if we start from the communities and think about what resources we've already got, then all of a sudden we don't probably have to, the gap isn't quite as large as we would expect it to be. And it could also be an opportunity as well, because sometimes I think that, and Rebecca made the point that having bad preschool is, it might be better just getting them play. I don't think we want to just add on necessarily just an extra classroom in a school and chuck 100 children in there and call that preschool, you know? So the fact that there isn't the resource available might mean that it stops a kind of simplistic solution just to get children into a building which is physically called a preschool but doesn't actually deliver any of the benefits we want. Okay, so that's the first point I want to make. The second one is, again on the resources, looking around and asking who is already there, you know, and what are they doing. So is it the case that you have caregivers in the community already? The whole thing about looking after younger siblings, or do you have children like, young women who basically, for maybe social economic reasons, don't go out and work in the formal labour market but are well skilled? This is what, as people argue, has led to the creation of some of the low-cost private schools in Pakistan. It's an employment opportunity. They have the skills. It's very easy to mobilise them, train them, give them the requisite skills, keep it in the community. Okay, so that's one option. Is it the case, again looking at who's already there, people are living longer now in a lot of the countries we're focused on in Africa. So they might be too old to go out to the fields, but they're still young enough to be able to stay and look after the children. So is it the case that you have like this army of grannies that are basically underutilised? In the UK, it's very common for people to just have the grandparents to look after the children. Okay, so do we have the opportunity to do this? Okay, and then if we are doing this, and this is already going on anyway, how do we certify it? How do we ensure the quality is there? So we don't really need to run training. We can perhaps just do a small-scale certification exercise and figure out the people that are already working, how do we make sure they've got the skills which are perceived to be necessary? All of which doesn't require a mass mobilization. It's just using what we've already got. Okay, so there were some brainstorm ideas about how we're doing it. And then a next thing I just wanted to raise is a point. As an academic, I was always taught to reference, so this is shamelessly stole from Louis Crouch, which is basically that we might be paying for it anyway. So Rebecca made the point, only 4 million children are in preschool, and in Sierra Leone, only 1.6% of the budget goes on preschool. I was in Sierra Leone last year, pre-Ebola, and I went into one of the schools, and I counted 130 children in the classroom, a grade 1 classroom, and these children were about that high. And I'm looking at them and saying, I know malnourishment's a problem, but there's no way that child is 6 years old, you know? And what happens is because there's no adequate preschool, the older siblings take the younger siblings to grade 1, and the incentives are set up for enrolment in grades 1 and grade 2. So are we actually paying for it anyway? You look at some of the enrolment rates, and please read the paper, and the repetition rates, and you've got very high enrolment rates in grade 1. Is it the case we're paying for preschool anyway by having inefficiencies in the system in grades 1 and grades 2? And if that is the case, then we need to accept the practical realities because it's harmful for the children in grade 1. How do you learn in a classroom of 120 kids? You know, you hear the rhetoric a lot, like class sizes don't matter. Like, I'm an economist. I've seen the literature. It's very well evidenced. But I don't know if it holds true at 120 children. How is it possible to teach? Okay, so the second point is, are we paying for it anyway? And should we be looking somewhere else for a solution and to free up some resources? So if we sort out the inefficiencies in grades 1, will this have a positive effect on pre-K? Okay, so that's all I wanted to say, so I'm going to pass it across to people. Hopefully that will stimulate some ideas and some further discussion. And who wants a hat?
I think that should go to one of you. Thank you so much, Paul and Rebecca. I think it certainly gave me a lot of food for thought, and I hope it did the same for all of you. And essentially, if you just just to recap a few of the things that Paul and Rebecca were alluding to, we do have to recognize that we have a long way to go, right? There are huge numbers of children that are currently not enrolled in pre-K. The financing models are completely different across different countries. So we do want to keep that in mind with our designing efforts. You might want to choose one specific cultural context that you're designing for, knowing how different the landscape actually looks. So just keep that in mind. A few thoughts that were in there that I thought are really interesting is the conversation about how important it is to raise the quality and to train teachers. So teacher training could be a great starting point for thinking about design. I think we've heard a few different perspectives of thinking about how to best use resources. So how can we be more efficient about using resources that already exist in the community, in individuals that may be interested in participating in pre-K education? And then if we do that, how do we ensure quality? Right? How do we train them? Is there a type of certification around that? Is there a way of ensuring a quality standard? And who establishes and decides what that looks like? So those just being a few of the starting points, and I am hoping that you have heard other thoughts in that conversation. We're now going to ask you to think about that as a design challenge. So in your teams of each table, so just a little bit of housekeeping, I would love to actually bring those of you who came in together. So why don't we, maybe I can ask you two ladies to join this table so that we can have one team here and then a team here and a team here. And I'd love to invite the two of you to just join one of the teams to design with them. Jaime is going to walk around and hand out a number of questions that are similar to the topics that we have just been hearing about. So as we heard from Rebecca and Paul ahead of time, we were thinking about how can we think of that as design challenges. So in your group, have a look at those questions and pick one that you think is really interesting, or you can also come up with your own question. If there's something that you would like to discuss as a group and saying, I really find it interesting to think about X, then do that. So just pick a question that you think is interesting to discuss. And of course, Paul and Rebecca, feel free to also think about something that would be an interesting discussion. We do no, just pick one. Actually, if you don't mind going on that one, that would be great. Yes. You can do that.
So the third question is, how might we establish a standard for how caregivers, teachers interact with kids, with children, to increase the standards? So one's about standards, one's about utilising all stakeholders.
Facilitate this group a little bit because they don't have Okay, perfect. So it looks like you have landed on a question to begin with for your conversations. Before we go further, I will just ask for your attention for one quick point, and then you can continue your conversations.
Okay.
Do I need a little bell? Okay. Okay, just a moment. We'll let you go back into your conversations in just a second. Before we do that, we actually are going to ask you to switch into a mode of brainstorming that is a very deliberate way of coming up with ideas that we use in order to be generative. Now, here's the thing. I think many of us are very analytical thinkers, and we're used to think about even just the question, right, by saying, is that even the right question we're asking, and how should we actually think about that differently? That is a very good way of analyzing and coming up with a challenge, in many ways incredibly important also to the idea development process. But in order to be able to think generatively and imaginatively, we sometimes have to actually put that aside for a little moment. And so at IDEO, we have established a set of brainstorming rules that really norm the behavior of how people engage with each other in that mode of brainstorming in our organization. We have found that those rules are super helpful for clients we work with and for groups we work with, just like the one we have here. And so we want to share those with you briefly today.
Okay, there's 7 rules to brainstorming. This will echo some of what we were talking about earlier in the session. First one is to defer judgment, right? There's no hierarchy when it comes to brainstorming, right? We want to think of as many ideas as possible. We're all excellent critics, but what we want to do is defer judgment to a later period. You'll have a chance to start whittling things down. Second one is encourage wild ideas. Some of the most amazing ideas come from the wild ideas. Many times, what wild ideas represent are what you think makes the most sense, but without any sort of constraints. And that's excellent for brainstorming. Third one is building on the ideas of others. We had a little exercise about that, and we know we're all veterans on that now. staying focused on the topic, right? Brainstorming's high energy. You want to generate as many ideas as possible. We're talking about, we want boards filled with Post-its, but you also want to be focused, right? You want to make sure that you're brainstorming around and keep focused on what you're actually trying to design for. One conversation at a time. So to be able to build on someone's idea, you have to make sure that you've heard that person's idea, right? So we want to be respectful and make sure that one person speaks at one time. Being visual. So these are the Post-its, and this is really key when you're trying to ideate around this. To the extent you can, we want to see a visualization of your idea. So you don't have to be Picasso or Matisse. We're talking about just stick figures. It's more about the idea that counts, but the more visual, the more that idea will resonate within the group. And going for quantity, where, as I was saying earlier, in a good session at IDEO, within 60 minutes, there are 100 different great ideas. So we want to be, you guys want to have, like I said, these Post-its, these boards filled with Post-its. So you want to go for quantity. Don't worry about the quality of each idea.
Okay, so you have about 8 minutes to brainstorm around a topic you've chosen. Don't be shy. Just think about what could be and try to be as tangible as possible. Is it a platform? Is it a brochure? Is it a program? Is it a person? How does this idea come to life?
Okay, guys. Okay, we're going to move on to the next phase. I thought you guys said you're already there. You had your brilliant idea. Okay, we ready? Wow, only 3 tables and we're having to clink the glasses here. All right, this is great discussion. That's excellent, excellent. So we're going to go on to the next phase now. I know you guys have a bunch of great ideas. I was hearing a few of them. What we want to do is now move into the prototyping phase. So what you want to do in a minute is identify one idea, the one that you think has the most potential, and you're going to actually start building something associated with it. So in the center of your tables, you guys have a whole bunch of materials, and we want you to be creative. And that's where the rubber hits the road when you're thinking about your idea, because you're going to have to build it in some way. And there are different ways that you can actually build them. This is a quote from somebody at IDEO. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, a prototype is worth 1,000 pictures, right? And some other people say never go to a meeting without a prototype. So we prototype everything. It's a great way of crystallizing your vision and seeing what you need to build on and what gaps you need to fill. So in a minute, we want you to, when I say go, we want you guys to start thinking about what you're going to build. And you've got the materials. You're only limited by your creativity. All right? So we want you to quickly pick one idea and start going. All right? Go. guys, we have about one more minute, okay? About 1 more minute. Yeah.
Wow, I love those. Can you take lots of photos? I displaced my phone. Great. Oh, awesome. Okay. Okay, are we about ready? I think we are, right? Perfect. So I have to tell you one thing. This is the third time that we are running this session. And this is the probably we thought was going to be the most abstract topic. And you have hands down built the most beautiful prototypes that we have seen in our sessions. So congratulations, you should be proud. That's really fantastic to see where you were taking it. We will ask each group to share what you have built. So explain to us what the question was you were thinking about and what you have built and what makes you excited about it. And I'm looking at you, so why don't we start with you? I do want to give you a microphone. Can we have this one on? Can I hand you this? Thank you so much.
Okay, so we decided that one of our ideas that we seem to be able to get the most out of was taking the learning to the children and using that way. Then the context actually is an awful lot easier to manage. So we decided to go about how could we take the learning to the children, and we then started the journey of a bus. So we decided that we could create a bus or a truck that the sides come down, and basically it goes from place to place. And in that way, you're not limited on places then. You can use the outside spaces. The hours would be flexible, and all of the things that we talked about could actually be utilised in this one little idea. So we've got, and on this bus then, it would be a sort of a one-stop shop for not just education for the children, education and training for the parents or the caregivers, as well as health and nutrition for all the people that actually came to that bus. So we've got in our prototype here, we've got a granny driver, and then in our bus, we've got it filled with learning materials, healthy food and nutrition. So we'd be doing work with the children with nutrition. The nursing, we've got the health and the nursing part of it. So vaccinations and developing hygiene and health for the children and the parents. The training, so not only are you actually utilising the parents to actually come and help in terms of so having more bodies and having people there to help you with the running of the bus, you've also giving them the opportunity to train and for their own professional development to be able then to move on. Using the outdoors, so the best playground, the best place to learn for children is obviously outside, and then so it breaks. You need less actual bought resources. Storybooks, we kind of like the idea again of it being like a bit of a library and a loan place, so you could loan out toys, you could loan out books to people that haven't got an awful lot. And have I missed anything out? Oh, and sponsorship. Obviously, you've got that bus moving around. It's going to stand out, and it would be perfect for sponsorship to raise more money.
Thank you so much. Wow. Elaborate prototype. I'm curious. Thank you, Rebecca. Rebecca, do you have any questions for the team or any thoughts?
I love the idea of the mobile early childhood bus. Were you guys just, were you thinking of this on like a massive scale? Could you have, is this like a fleet of buses? Yeah, I'd be curious to hear about that.
Tell us about your conversations.
We were thinking of having a fleet of vehicles where they could donate trucks, pantechnicons, depending on the terrain, it might need to be a smaller minibus and so on, but all the same principle.
Super interesting.
And we were talking about sponsorship, so getting the car vehicle sponsors businesses, so getting minis, getting a range Land Rovers, getting everyone involved and donating vehicles.
Yeah, fascinating. Completely different idea from what I would have thought we would get. Fascinating. Okay, this team here has also built a really beautiful prototype. Can you share with us what it is and what it does? Here you go. You can share the.
Okay, the idea is we have to show to the people that it is important to go to school, to preschool. So we can show like having seeds and giving seeds to people and saying, okay, if you don't give water or nutritious things to the seeds, they will never grow. To say, if you don't give water to a tree before 6 months, it will never grow. If you give water from the beginning, it will have roots and fruits, and it is like early child preschool, if you want your child to grow. And the idea is to put one of those trees in front of supermarket or in front of market, it depends on the country where you are, in order for the families who are not sending the children to be aware and to be sensitive about this issue. You want to add something, Kurt? Okay. And really to understand, because the people who are not sending children to preschool are most of the time very simple people. So you need simple ideas in order for them to understand that preschool helps the brain to be developed, helps the child to socialize, help him to have change for the future.
Great. Thank you so much. Paul, any thoughts or questions about where that might go or where it might live or what it might...
I'm not allowed to say no, but so I'm not going to say no. I just, one of the things we've learned a lot is the amount of demand for education. One of the things, like wherever I've been in the world, seems to be universal is quite how much parents invest in education and want to invest. So sometimes I think we need to get the messaging right, and we need to understand why they're maybe not choosing to, because I've never met a person in the world that doesn't want the best for their children. And education is a key thing to that. And we're not allowed to say no, but you hear it a lot when you talk to the communities. You say you need to go to school, they're like, well, they actually say yes, but. So it's yes, but we're poor. Yes, but, you know, they've got to look after the younger children. So I completely agree. We need to be building up and getting the sport. But we need to do it in kind of partnership and collaboration with other solutions. You know, so we sometimes if you've got a simple solution, I always think it's wrong because someone would have done it anyway. And in a lot of the communities we work in, people are doing it anyway. You know, like so they're starting up their own centres.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. One thing I really liked about the conversations that you've been having was also about how to then engage people in conversations that would be addressing some of those questions, possibly, right? And yeah, the idea of giving out plants or giving out seeds to people, possibly showing them what the investment might be or so. I was actually really drawn to this because I think it's such a poetic way of explaining that, right? And saying if you don't water the plant, it's going to not really grow to the extent of where it could be. So there's many different ways of where you could take it, right? And how you could essentially take that further.
Yes, I think that's a very valid point, what you mentioned. I think we talked about
Microphone.
that a little bit, saying that different locations with different people from different statuses and different backgrounds would require different forms of communication. Because obviously Cambodia is quite different to the GCC, is quite different to the Western world. And so we would obviously need to look at how you tailor this communication, which goes back to your point in terms of what are the actual needs of the parents, or what are their views on this subject? Why are they not sending their kids to school? Because everybody does want the best for their children. So we would need to then understand that better before. But the whole idea would be that communicating to the parents in a way that's effective to tell them this is something that is really needed.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, we have one more group. I will take my microphone over here. There we go.
I cannot speak English. I want somebody to translate. Okay?
Yes. Okay, fantastic. Yes, that's good.
نحن لما سوينا هذا المجسم اعتمدنا على مواد خام ممكن تكون هي مواد تالفة نحولها لوسائل تعليمية أو لمكان تعليمي للأطفال اللاجئين اللي بمراكز اللجوء. فلذلك هلا انا هيك تخيلت هيك الصوره.
Okay, because we decided to split into two groups, and I actually have one more idea as well that we'll probably hijack, and that's we're going to hire a lot of bus drivers and steal those buses. And then that will be the easiest way out. So
there we go. Convergence.
So that was. So now
do you
we've got.
mind giving us a little bit of a translation?
So allow me to try to combine both ideas. But in a nutshell, sorry, this lady was saying that we would be using the material that's like disposable material that people would get rid of, and then try to make something out of it in areas where refugees need that support. So, yes?
So to expand on it, what we could do is use their school bus idea. And in fact, well, the thing is instead of a school bus, we would, I'm stealing this one, Stuart. Yeah. Do containers. What do they call them? Shipping containers. And you can convert the shipping containers into the refugee areas as schools, for example. But to expand on that even further, what we'll do first to train the professionals is do a bit of market research in each community of need. Go in there, see what is actually happening, what type of education is happening for the students. Even if it's not formal, we all know as, I guess, early childhood enthusiasts that learning happens, in natural settings. So if it's during childhood games, what is it that these children are playing? What are the games particular to that context? And then create a program using best practice and basically the Ghana model, where you cascade with one individual through satellite, solar paneled, what would you call it? Feeding system, I guess, presentation to train different members of the community who I'm sure already are taking a role in these children's education or taking care of these children, to upskill them, which then maybe we can look at this as different communities, and they work together through group observations after receiving that formal you guys can't hear me? I speak really loudly.
It's helpful for the translation. It's hard for them to hear
the translation.
Yeah.
So, where was I? So these are the teachers or the individuals in the communities who show interest in taking lead in this, cascaded down from the one individual or two individuals through the solar satellite. Right? Right? This is before the journey bus. We skill them in order to drive the journey bus and be able to feed out all the information that they just learned, incorporating their context and what they already know and what is already part of their environment and their traditions. And then get them to create some type of collaboration between little communities that are nearby. Did we get everything in there? Yeah? All right. So that is our morph of everybody's idea into one.
That was a lot of convergence there. Thank you so much.
On the fly.
Any questions for the group? Rebecca, can I just grab the mic? Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay, I think I followed what you're saying. So, where did could you tell me, or all of us, or could you share with us a little bit more this disposable materials thing? Because it seems, and the refugee thing. So was the training thing in refugee camps, or?
Well, this was in silos. It can happen anywhere, really. It doesn't
Okay.
have to be in refugee camps, but it can. It could be in any neighborhood that needs it, whether low economy, high economy, whoever needs to improve their early childhood professionals.
I see. Your group had two groups. You had. Oh, okay. That was.
He came out of nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah, let's hear more about this. Okay.
So the disposable materials, if you could say a little bit more about that.
اوكي. المجسم اعتمدنا على إعادة تدوير الأشياء التالفة لاستخدامها بالتعليم بالأماكن اللي مقيمين فيها الأطفال بمراكز اللجوء.
Yeah, we'll give you the mic and let you translate that, and then. Okay.
Okay, so I think the point of the refugee training or camp point was where they would use material that is maybe disposable or not maybe commonly found in some countries, so they'll just find it in for refugee camps and they will create stuff out of it. So I think it was probably going down the social development or entrepreneurship route, if I'm not mistaken.
تعمدنا انه يكون في بالنسبه لتعليم الاطفال تسخير الطاقات والجهود لتدفع لتقوم بمساعده الطفل للارتفاع للاعلى. يعني كانت المعلمه هون، فكره المعلمه هون باسفل الهرم المدرسي والطفل باعلى الهرم المدرسي. المقصود هو تسخير الجهود قدر الامكان لرفع يعني معنويات الطفل وثقافته التعليميه للاعلى.
The translator's gonna help
He's
us
coming.
on that one. Yeah. Yeah, it was really about.
Great.
نحن اول شيء اعتمدنا بالمدرسه انه في نحن بالقاعه كنا رقم واحد عم نحضر محاضره، فكانت بتتحدث عن الاطفال بمراكز اللجوء اللي هن بالسودان، اللي هن بكمبوديا، اللي هن بسوريا. فهذا الموضوع كان رائع بالنسبه لي، انا حضرته بالقاعه رقم واحد المحاضره الاولى. لذلك استوحيت فكره المدرسه من يعني الواقع اللي عايشين فيه هدول الاطفال، بحيث انه نحن اعتمدنا على تدوير الاشياء التالفه او التبرعات اللي ممكن تكون مستخدمه من قبل الاهالي، بحيث انه نحن ناخذها نستخدمها كوسائل او لتجهيز اماكن تعليميه للطلاب او للاطفال اللي موجودين باماكن اللجوء. فاستخدمنا الاشياء التالفه.
Yes. We want to hear.
Okay, I'm quoting. I attended a lecture in hall number 1, and I got inspired by the idea that was discussed. They were talking about some refugee centers in Sudan, Cambodia, and other countries. And I said, why not thinking of using something that is disposable, that is recyclable in such refugee camps area in order to benefit this unprivileged student and prepare some learning tools and facilities for them. That's the idea.
المعلمه هون بالهرم او موجوده بالمدرسه ترفع من معنويات الطفل ومن ثقافته التعليميه قدر الامكان بمراكز يعني تفتقر بادنى وسائل التعليم. يعني انا بعتقد انه لازم اكثر من الوسائل.
Okay, and that icon there, up there, represents the teacher and she wants to convey the idea that she wants teachers to lift the morale of the students and make them feel, feel their self-esteem in such places and areas.
لازم يكون في عنده تأهيل خاص، المعلم اللي بهيك مراكز أو أماكن لازم يكون في عنده دورات تأهيلية خاصة تراعي الحالة النفسية كمان للطفل بهيك مراكز.
It's why such teachers need special education and training in order to have the full capabilities to deal with students in such areas, in the refugee camps.
بجوز أنا ابتعدت شوي عن تفكيرهم أو عن أفكار المجموعة، لكن أنا حبيت ألفت نظر يعني المجتمع التعليمي بشكل عام لهدول الأطفال اللي هن متواجدين بمراكز اللجوء.
Yeah, I'm aware that I got far from the topic that was discussed in the table, but I just want to draw your attention to this special community. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And this is interesting because it's thinking about, it could also be thinking about a visual representation, right, of showing that, which is similar to what you were thinking about over here. So with that, we want to wrap up and thank you all so much for being here and participating and playing. We know that it felt different from the rest of the conference. We hope it did. We hope you are taking away questions, thoughts, something that you might have heard from each other. This was an opportunity for you to hear each other speak and really share some of your thoughts as well. And you might have taken away a little tip as well that you might find useful in the future. If you have any questions for us, then please reach out. We will be here. And otherwise, thank you again for your participation, to our speakers and to our facilitators. Really appreciate it.